Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how I made these stained wood floating-ish shelves for my kitchen. They turned out so beautiful and they match the modern farmhouse theme I was going for. So let's jump right in and I'll show you how I did this. Started out with a 1x12 by 6 foot pine board that I just got from Home Depot. I decided to go ahead and cut this in half to make 2 shelves, and I wouldn't have to buy smaller boards, which were more expensive. My husband actually did the cutting for me because he could measure perfectly and get all the cutting exactly right. So that was the only thing that he did on this project, and I did the rest. I used my circular sander with 320 grit sandpaper to go ahead and sand the edges and the tops and bottoms really well. I wanted it to be nice and smooth. Then I went in and I lightly did the edges in the corners by hand so they wouldn't be so sharp. I didn't want to use the sander for this because I was afraid it would just knock it down too much and be uneven. So that's why I just lightly did it by hand so I can have more control. After you sand something before you stain it, you want to make sure that you wipe all of the dust off really well. So after we cut the boards, it was actually several weeks before I sanded and stained them. So we actually put them in this press here to keep them from warping because they're kind of wet and not fully dried out. Since they're not stacked up with all the other boards at the store, they want to warp, and so I didn't want my boards to warp, so we left it in this contraption here to keep it from warping for several weeks as it dried out. Then I did the sanding, and now it's time to stain. So I'm just nailing some nails into some old wood that we have, so that way it's up off of the ground and I can easily stain these boards. I think I forgot to sand these. Okay, so then I took them down and sanded them, and that was the footage that you saw. So now it's time to get to staining. I just used a rag and wore some gloves, and my absolute favorite is the Vurathane, I think is the brand, and it's Briar Smoke. It's the same one that we use for the shelves in the dining room, our dining room table, and our hood vent. If you guys have not seen that video, you have to see that video. It turned out amazing. It really ties these shelves in and just looks so amazing. This is my favorite. So I just wiped some on, left it a few minutes, and then I wiped it off. I waited a couple days for it to dry, and then I flipped it over and I did the other side. I let them dry for several days before I proceeded to put them on the wall, and oh my goodness, they turned out absolutely gorgeous. Here are the brackets that I'm going to be hanging up the shelves with. I just got them from Amazon. I'll link them down below. They're just black ones, and I really liked this style. It comes with the hardware that you need. However, if you're not going to be screwing it into the studs, do not use these white screws. These are just drywall screws, and if you're going to be hanging heavy stuff on your shelf, this is not going to cut it. We went to our local hardware store and we got actual drywall anchors that are going to be very sturdy and strong, much better than the ones that come with it. So I'll have to drill large holes in the wall, which I'll show you how I do that. So keep that in mind. One side of our shelves will be screwed into the studs, and then the other side will have this. So again, I'm hanging heavy stuff on here, and I don't want to compromise the strength of the shelf by using the wrong kind of screws. First, I'm going to start out by just kind of eyeballing and placing the shelves about where I think, and then I can make some marks and do some measurements. First, I started out by marking the studs. That way I knew right where those were at. And then I used a level to mark the edge of the countertop. That way I can exactly center the shelf between the window and the countertop. My shelves were about 36 inches and I left about 2 inches between the window and the edge of the countertop, and that way I could have it all perfectly centered there on the wall. To put both brackets on the studs, it was too close together and looked funny, so I put one on the stud and then I just measured from the end of the board where that one would be. And then I just measured from the other end. That way my brackets could be centered on my board nicely, if that makes sense. I installed the bracket on the side with the stud first, and I used a level to make sure it was nice and level. I used my tape measure to make sure it was perfect, and then I screwed it in the wall. So for the bracket that's not going to be in the stud, we're going to use the special drywall anchor. So I got a drill bit that was the size of my anchor, and I drilled a hole in the wall. And then you have to attach these along with the screw and your shelf, because you poke it in the hole, and then once you tighten it, it pops open and anchors onto the drywall. So it's a bit tricky to kind of maneuver in, but once I got it, it was nice and secure. Going in, it's not getting behind the drywall to pop open. It would help if I had a wider drill to drill a bigger hole, but I don't have. Oh, that one, yes, I got it. Okay, that's the key. You have to make sure you have enough screw length to be able to put the whole anchor in so it can pop open. Okay, let's try this now. And you don't want to tighten them too much, because if you tighten them too much, then it'll push too hard and dig into the drywall, and you'll lose that anchor support and it won't be as strong. But this feels just as strong as the other side. So don't use the little white drywall screws that come with it if you're planning on putting heavy wood and heavy stuff on here, because it's just not going to hold. You need drywall anchors to actually anchor it behind the drywall. So I'm pretty happy. Let's put the shelf on. I put the shelf on, and then I checked again to see if it was level. It was pretty close. However, I did have to make a few adjustments. Now it's time to figure out how high I want the next shelf to be up. I just kind of eyeballed it and measured it. I ended up doing a 15-inch gap between the two shelves, and for me that worked out perfect. So I just followed the same steps to attach those brackets to the wall. I used a level so that way I can make sure that the brackets were exactly lined up, and that was really helpful, and it turned out perfect. Once I was finished, I used my vacuum and a rag to get this all clean, because of screwing into the drywall, it made a mess. Once I got the shelves up, I used my tape measure to make sure that the shelves were centered perfectly on the brackets and to each other. And then I used the screws that came with them and screwed them underneath to secure them on the brackets so that way they wouldn't move. Now I do want to mention that even though these brackets say it's for a 12-inch board, if you have a 12-inch shelf, it's not going to work. If you buy a 12-inch deep board from the lumber section at Lowe's or Home Depot, it's 11.5 inches. Same thing like if you were to buy a 2x4, it's actually not 2x4. Kind of weird, but I just want to point that out so that way you understand the shelving size that you're buying. So make sure that if you buy these brackets that say 12 inches deep, you actually get a board that is not exactly 12 inches, or it won't fit this bracket, if that makes sense. I was so proud of myself for getting this up here perfectly. I did this all by myself, minus, cutting the board. But let's go ahead and style these with our dishes. I just have the plain white Corelle dishes. I just love the look of those, very simple. And I love this open shelving look. It's very easily accessible, and it just looks so pretty. I hope you guys enjoyed this shelf DIY. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to check out our other kitchen and home renovation videos. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.
Leave the